All right, guys, welcome in. Sorry, this is my first time going live. This was just easier for me to basically do numerous breakdowns and whatnot. So I am gonna kind of get started with it here real quick. I don't know if we're gonna have anybody really on here to to like go and uh, come in and basically suggest any games, but I'm going to go through as many as I can, and we're just going to kind of dive in and see how it goes. So this is I've had a long week, so I wanted to be able to cover as many games as possible like this. So let's dive in real quick, and then we'll just kind of go from there. So we're going to start off. The first game that we have on the docket is going to be Ole Miss versus Arkansas, and so this is a very interesting game simply because we have Ole Miss at -7.5, and this is just a spot like they have to get right. And so the worry here is that they have struggled against, you know, um, like Power Five teams, like SEC teams in general, right? So they come in. We have our early down data here. Now, remember, this data is out of 70 Power Five teams, including Notre Dame. So this kind of gives us a little bit more of a concrete data instead of looking at all the data that included, the lesser games that they played. This kind of gives us like more of a picture, right? So as you can see, Ole Miss is very good, especially on defense on early downs. Nothing that like shocking. We've kind of been, tooting this horn all year essentially, and they are elite overall on early downs. And as you can see, Arkansas is just kind of like middle of the road. They're good on defense, but offense is just kind of like middling, right? So when we come over to the advanced statistics part of it, you're going to see some interesting outliers here, right? So Ole Miss is great efficiency, and they're fantastic. When it comes to explosive plays, and that's not shocking, especially if you've taken a look at them when it comes to like the eye test, right? There, you see Trey Harris all over the field making big plays, and like this is no shock when it comes to any type of Lane Kiffin offense, right? So the main thing here is when we're looking at, Arkansas, they really are struggling from like a couple areas, right? The stuff rate and the front seven havoc is something that is kind of concerning to me. The only reason is because Jackson Dart, when given time and a clean pocket, is just elite, especially down the field. He's not like a dink and dunk, like Quinn Ewers esque type quarterback. Nothing against him, but that's just the facts, right? And so, as we can see, as we're lining this up, Arkansas is extremely good at limiting explosiveness, rushing, and passing. And so this is going to be kind of like a strength on strength matchup. And it gives you a little bit of concern if you're backing Ole Miss because it seems like time and time again, they have to have big plays to win games. That just seems to be the overall like narrative, right? And so when we come to the opposite side, the defense is the best unit of this team by far. As you can see, they just all green across the board, like defensive line yards, havoc, overall havoc, front seven havoc, defensive back havoc, against the run, against the pass. I mean, they're just amazing across the board, right? And so that is just, but that's the thing, right? They're not going to be able to score points on defense. Like you can't like cap that into it. So the main thing that we're going to look at, we're going to look at some depth profiles here. This is the overall Mickey Mouse and Big Dog overall, and that essentially just lets us know, like all 134 teams, right? We're not going to be looking at that, but we need it for a frame of reference to see if a team has performed better against its overall schedule or against the tougher parts of its schedule, which is crucial, right? So when we go to the Power Five side of it, mainly here, what we're looking at is if Ole Miss is going to be able to take advantage or be able to do essentially what they want to do in the offensive area. So they do not throw the ball 9 yards or less too often. It's 53% of the time, but that is bottom 6, 7, and all Power 5 teams. So and they really don't throw the ball short nearly as much as other teams, but they are, really good at it. Ignore that. And so they're 20th in EPA per short attempt. And then when we go, this is the area that is really the one that's going to basically decide the game and the spread, to be perfectly honest. Ole Miss is first in EPA per medium attempt. And this was written up at the very beginning of the year when we said, Jackson Dart is arguably the best quarterback when throwing in the intermediate part of the field from 11 to 19 yards. And now they don't throw it a ton there, 22.5%. They really should move that up a little bit, but they do force the ball down the field quite a lot. So they're first overall in deep percentage. Now they're 41st in EPA per deep attempt. But the thing is, if there's one area of the field that you should be forcing the ball more, it is deeper, because you don't have to be as efficient throwing it deep for the EPA to come out on the right side of the ball, right? I would rather always have a middling EPA when throwing the ball deep than almost borderline elite behind the line of scrimmage, right? Because you just got to get so many more things right when you're going when you're doing the dink and dunk, Oregon-esque style offense, right? And so what we really need to look at here is looking at whether or not Arkansas is going to be able to defend in these areas, right? And the thing is, Arkansas is just this is their overall, right? So not that great, but let's look at their Power 5 stuff. Yeah, so it tracks, right? Arkansas is horrendous at behind the line of scrimmage and short area passes, and they're just bad in general. 67th out of 70. That's pretty bad. That's pretty bad. But the thing is, what's even crazier is when we go to the opposite side, they are elite in defending the pass down the field. So that makes me wonder whether or not if Kiffin is going to be able to pick up on this and look at it from an angle where, you have to adapt your play calling to what you have in front of you, right? So Arkansas they put a lid on anything down the field, and that's obviously why they're very good at limiting explosive plays. So something's going to have to give in either of these instances, right? So when we go to look at the schedule and just kind of overall what they've been up against, they were very good at limiting, Tennessee to down the field passes, but that's not really shocking to me. And the simple reason is because you have an offense that is just struggling. And Nico is struggling from a quarterback standpoint and connecting on those passes down the field. So that's not shocking to me that they had success in that area. But what is shocking is that they won that game. I obviously didn't think they would beat Tennessee, but that is a very good win. Now, they're going to get Mississippi at home again, and I don't know. This is the thing that really is going to be somewhat concerning to me. Mississippi did not look sharp last week against Oklahoma. They came through in the second half, obviously, but they're going to have to essentially pick their poison, right? They cannot force the ball down the field just to force it down the field against this elite secondary. They will need to pick their spots. And if it takes dinking and dunking down the field, you kind of have to live with that. You have to live with being able to, not have these, 45-second drives or anything like that, right? You kind of have to live with that. And the thing is here, the entire season is on the line for Ole Miss. They have to win out. And you could say oh, they have Georgia on a look ahead. It will not matter if they don't win this game. And they have to win this game to even have any type of semblance of making the playoffs, because they're also going to have to beat Georgia next week at home. Now, when you look at Arkansas on the other side, Obviously, they're not playing for a playoff berth. Uh, they have 3 losses already, but they are playing for um, a lot of pride, I would say, in this game. They have they have played very well against teams that are just better than them, to be perfectly honest. And I mean, the one thing I would say, the LSU matchup, they just got utterly destroyed in, and that is something that I guess we can kind of take a look at just to make sure that we're not missing anything from that aspect. When I look at LSU, oh, come on, computer, um, and we're looking at kind of their profile overall, they're throwing 10 yards or more down the field 40% of the time. So they're more than that. But when we look at LSU, let me pull them up right here. 57% of the time in the short area, which is a little bit higher than Ole Miss. But the thing is, in the short area, they just this is the part right here: 43.2%, 1 to 9 yards, and they're really good in that area. And that's just where Arkansas struggles, right? Now the thing is, Ole Miss is doing that, 12% less, right? And so they're going to have to get that number closer up and near the 40s to probably take advantage of where Arkansas has it is weakest, right? And so I do think Ole Miss is going to show up here, but I do not think they're going to cover the 7.5. I think Arkansas really has the kind of the recipe to go up against a team like this, and I don't think the pace is going to be as big of a factor. And I think even though Ole Miss's defense is going to show up, I think on the road here there's going to be some concern looking ahead to Georgia, and I think they're going to come out somewhat flat. They can still win this game, obviously, but I think it's going to be closer than what the spread is indicating. Now, when we come into yeah, hey, trick or treat. Sorry, this is my first time doing the chat and stuff, so I'm trying to keep up with the chat and keep up with the overall, right? So yeah, Trey Harris was injured last game, and he is the biggest part of that offense by far. And so, but even with that being said, I think the offense is going to have to play a little bit differently than they normally would. And so, I think like Arkansas is primed for a solid spot. I don't know if they'll win, but I do think they will cover that 7.5. Now, when we go to the next game, it's probably the biggest game of the week with Ohio State and Penn State. And I'm kind of at a loss for words for either of these teams. And the main reason is Ryan Day is consistently just consistently shits the bed, right? In big games, it happens all the time. There's really no reason they should have lost to Oregon. It just happens all the time. Like the only time they've shown up in a big game recently is when they beat Notre Dame, which I don't want to talk about. That's still depressing. But anyway, looking at the overall landscape on the early downs, they're both very good metric wise versus Power 5 teams that they've faced so far. So there's not really anything here that we're going to dive into too deep to be like, oh, there's a giant advantage, because that's not really the case. So when we go to the advanced statistics, the one thing that is very concerning if you're thinking about backing Penn State is they allow a ton of explosive plays, 116th overall, which is kind of eye-opening considering they rank so well in pretty much every other category, right? Biggest weakness in rushing explosiveness allowed. But what's crazy is their other rushing metrics are elite, arguably the best in college football. First in stuff rate, second in defensive line yards, 18th in front seven havoc. And they are very good efficient wise, 8th in efficiency overall against the rush. And obviously with Ohio State, you know, they have Judkins and Trayvon Henderson and Will Howard, and uh, they're just they're great overall, right? And so the main thing is, are they going to show up in this spot? I think it's going to be a whiteout. I'm not 100% sure. I'll have to double check. And Penn State's going to be raucous. They're going to be getting after it. And when we flip it over to the defensive side of the ball, Ohio State has looked really good in certain areas. Havoc always, they seem to always rank very well Havoc wise. But there are some more pedestrian areas like the passing defense, the secondary is below what is expected of them. They are expected to be much better. Okay, 40th in passing efficiency, 63rd in passing explosiveness allowed, and that's just not good enough. Especially in this day and age when you're trying to compete against pretty much all passing offenses, right? But I think where we're going to see the biggest, this is an area where I've kind of been looking at the last couple weeks for Ohio State that really concerns me from the defensive standpoint. So, sorry, my computer's a little bit slow. But okay, so when we look at Penn State, they're very good behind the line of scrimmage and they're very good short EPA, right? And they're second overall in passes 9 yards or less. But they're not doing those passes at a crazy elevated rate. It's only 58.6% of the time. So when you go to passes down the field, the big dog passes, this is where they just are elite, right? But the thing is, all right, so they're passing the ball in the medium range first overall, 32.6% of the time. And this is mainly, we've had this discussion before. I had this in the USC video. Kotelnicki is known for this type of depth profile because he likes to run a ton of play action. All right, so they're 32nd overall, which doesn't seem great, but that type of EPA per attempt is golden when you're attempting it at such a high clip. Now, they're extremely good throwing the ball deep down the field, which again is built off the play action game, but they're not doing it really much at all, 7.2% of the time. And so the thing here is we have to understand. I said this, I had a comment a while ago on the Washington, Iowa video, which was probably my worst take of the entire season. And sometimes, even though we see there's a clear advantage for a team, we have to lean on the tendency data and understand that even though that clear advantage is there, that does not mean that the team is going to take advantage of it, right? So we just have to kind of understand that. And this is kind of my point. Ohio State is horrendous down the field, especially deep. They're 61st overall out of 70. I know that doesn't really put it in perspective for you. So we're going to go to the overall, 134 teams, so you can just kind of understand how really bad they are. And so let me pull it up real quick. They're 102nd when it comes to EPA deep ring, okay? And that is bad. Really bad, especially for a team that you're wanting, to have championship aspirations. Now, the thing is, I don't know if they're going to be able to have enough big plays in this game from Kotelnicki to draw up for Drew Lar. But the thing is, the advantage is there. And I sit on I might look at some tonight's game here in a minute, Andrew K. I'm just looking at I just got into the second video, the second game, which is the big Penn State Ohio State game. But so the thing is here, I cannot stand the coaching staffs that we have. Penn State is just going to Penn State. It seems like James Franklin has been on the hot seat since he got there. It feels like, and he just never wins these games. But the same thing can be said for Ryan Day, right? He just also can never show up in these games. So let's take a look at the schedule, make sure we're not missing anything else on it. It is a very tough game. I believe it's still sitting at 3.5, something along those lines. And so the thing is, obviously, you have the look ahead from the Nebraska game last week for Ohio State. I mean, gigantic favorites. Probably should have lost that game in all reality. Um, and so you have them, coming in here, right? Penn State, on the other hand, they they took care of business against Wisconsin in a game that was like tougher early in the game, but they pretty much pulled away. That game was, they had it in hand in the fourth quarter. Now, the thing for me is simply that Ohio State has to win this game. Because if they lose this game and they take on two losses, there is no guarantee that that makes them playoff bound. And I know that's a tough like pill to swallow if you're an Ohio State fan, but that's the reality of the situation because they're going to be a two-loss team and they will not. And I mean, that's not guaranteeing that they beat Indiana also, which they probably will. They'll be at home. They'll probably be 10-point favorites, but they will have nothing to offer with two losses. I mean, the Indiana win will be the biggest win of the year, so they'll have nothing to offer for that. But I think in reality, I think in reality, like Penn State is a solid play here. They're 3.5 at home. It'll be a whiteout more than likely. They are just as good overall than Ohio State, and like there's nothing about Ohio State that they haven't seen before. Like CJ Stroud is not walking through that door, so there's not like any super game changing player that I think is going to stand out and like be able to just completely wreck the game like they normally do for Ohio State. So, all right. So we got a couple of, what do you guys got? You got Georgia State, UConn is something you guys are wanting to look at. Um, yeah, I mean, the Georgia State game is kind of tough. They are really banged up, and like UConn 8.5 is tough in its own right. But let's see if we can find some stuff on here. Give me 1 second. All right, let's see what we're pulling up here. Yeah, I mean, I would after last year, I would have been floored to say, oh, I think UConn being favored by 8.5 over anybody is like terrifying. But it's 2024, and a lot of things are happening that I don't that I would not have foreseen. So yeah, they're going to go up into Georgia. They're going to have Georgia State at home. I mean, just I mean, this is what's even crazier. They only got like the 6 days rest, but they're getting just demolished across the board all the way down. Let me see if I can pull up some of their stats. I didn't have them like put into my sheet because I wasn't going to cover them. So just give me 1 second. I'll pull it up real quick. All right, so advanced. Here we go. All right, so let's take a look. You guys' take is that they're going to run all over them. Was that your take, Trick? Let's take a look real quick. All right, so let's go to the defensive tab for Georgia State. All right, so let's take a look real quick. So stuff rate 84th, 112th in defensive line yards, 109th in havoc overall, 127 in front seven havoc allowed, 112th in rushing efficiency, 59. Yeah, I mean, like there's definitely some traction to that. So take a look at Connecticut, see if they are going to be able to take advantage of that. Offensive line, not fantastic, but we can't like really, expect that. It is UConn. But like average rushing the ball, a little bit above average explosiveness. I mean, yeah, I could see that definitely as a play that could be there. I probably won't have anything on that, to be honest. But that's definitely in play. Like, Georgia State is going to be tough it's going to be tough stopping that run. And they haven't stopped anybody. Like, I mean, they're just getting dominated across the board, App State, Marshall, ODU. I mean, somehow they beat fucking Vanderbilt. I don't even know how that's even like possible looking back. That's probably the most like eye-opening win of the year so far. But you know that's even crazier. So, but I'm gonna dive back in. I'm not gonna do Minnesota, Illinois. I put it on the list, but I'd rather take a nap than do that game. So Oregon, Michigan. I think this is a spot. Which is kind of tough because Oregon, I think they're 14 and a half, 15 and a half here. This is a tough spot simply because uh, you know they should dominate here, right? So it's going to be really curious what we get out of Michigan. I mean, but the early downs data is obviously in Oregon's favor. They're the number one overall team on offense and early downs, and 10th overall on defense. And Michigan's offense is abysmal, and it's very tough to watch. It's bad. But like what we've touched base on a lot when it comes to Oregon is they're not an explosive team, even though that is the usually like what people would think. But they're just not explosive, and so but the defense for Michigan is kind of, I don't want to say falling apart, but it is showing some cracks. Like 100th and stuff rate, that's like way up from earlier in the year. Um, then you're looking at like 111th in passing explosiveness allowed. Now, I know Oregon might not be able to take advantage of that. Excuse me, but from a passing efficiency, they're definitely going to do better than this, and that's probably what's more eye opening. And then when we come to the opposite side of the ball, like the secondary for Oregon is going to be able to pretty much just lock up this passing offense. And then, the front seven is going to be able to focus in on this rushing attack. And that's one thing, Michigan isn't even like a plodding running team anymore. They're not efficient. They're not explosive. The 15 and a half seems justified to me, at least. It seems justified, right? Um, but and yeah, the two time zone travel is one thing, but we just saw this against Purdue when they traveled two time zones, right? And that didn't really matter, but it is something to like keep of note. I think that is important. Like I don't want to discard that, 100%, right? But let's look at the depth profiles just to make sure, like we're on par with what we're looking at. So Oregon, they, as I'm like, you guys have heard me go on and drone on about, and I've been saying this for years with my friends. I just cannot stand their depth profile. Like this, almost 30% behind the line of scrimmage shit just bothers me so much. But like we have to accept teams for who they are, and we can't like expect them to do more, right? 70% of their passes are 9 yards or less, right? So when we go over, and the problem is they have Dylan Gabriel who can pass the ball down the field, as you can see right here, 9th in medium attempts EPA and 5th in deep attempts EPA, and 4th overall in any attempt 10 yards or more down the field. But they're only throwing it 29% of the time. So like it's infuriating to say the least, But when we look at the defensive side of it, we have to kind of take a look at Michigan and see where their disadvantages are, right? So, they're below average. They're decent against the behind the line of scrimmage passes, but they're not great in the short area, 52nd overall out of 70 Power 5 teams. And then down the field, not good either. Like they're just, they're just not good. Like, I know people like want to think they're going to be better and like they're going to turn around, but like there's a risk that what are they at 5-3? They're gonna lose to Oregon, very well could lose to Indiana, and definitely lose to Ohio State. So they're gonna be 6-6 more than likely. So I think, and we don't really have anything on the Oregon side. I don't think, yeah, they're on the same amount of rests. They just, annihilated Purdue or annihilated Illinois. there is nothing here that I see that I really would. I would. I don't know. I don't know. I know it's a terrible spot. But I don't see any area where like I can't make a case for putting my hard earned money on Michigan. To be real, like if you wanna go out and risk 15 and a half, that's totally fine. Like that's I totally get it. But like let's look at the spots that Michigan has shown up in when they were doubted this year, right? The only spot they shown up in when they were doubted was probably what USC. That's legitimately it. They beat Michigan State last week, but to be perfectly honest, they probably should have lost that game, right? I don't see them showing up here. And I don't think it's a. I know they have Indiana next week, but that's not like a giant rivalry game. They're not going to be looking ahead to Indiana. I think um, I just think they're gonna. I think they're gonna get just fucking boat raced. Basically, I think Oregon's kind of settled into uh, this Big Ten schedule. Where they struggled like with Boise State, and then they had some physicality issues. They were like, okay, they didn't look great against Michigan State, even though they won by 21. I, I think it's going to be very similar to these last two games, and I cannot take 15 and a half in that standpoint. So, you guys got anything else while I'm moving along? Any other games you want me to cover while I'm in the middle of it? Because I'm just going to keep going down my list. All right. So I'm going to go on to the Vanderbilt Auburn game. I have not looked up. Pavia is playing, right? Uh, that's right, correct? I haven't missed anything. Um, just want to make sure. Pavia. Okay, yeah, he's not on the injury report. So just making sure. Yeah, but he is banged up. That's true. Yeah, that is very true. But we're going to dive into it and just kind of see where we sit on this. I mean, Vanderbilt's obviously been a super fan favorite team. Pavia coming from New Mexico State. You guys all know the drill. He's very familiar with the system that they brought over. And so, yeah, that's why they've had so much success. Now, this is one thing to keep an eye on. They do not pass the ball a lot on early downs, 28% of the time. So, third to last in that. But they are really good at passing the ball. So, you kind of wish they would pass it more. But, I digress. Auburn, on the other hand, not really anything to write home about outside of, very good on early downs, defense rushing against the ball. So let's look at some of the advanced stuff. All right. So, Vanderbilt, obviously, we all know they kind of break the mold a little bit when it comes to like the advanced statistics. So you kind of have to take them with like a grain of salt. Not great in stuff rate, not explosive. The offensive line is pretty tough, right? But like and they like to rush the ball, but they're not efficient. They're not explosive, but they're much better in the passing game, and that is where I think their advantages lie in this game. Simply because that's where Auburn's weakness is. Their front four, front seven, if you want to say, is their advantage. 16th overall rushing efficiency, front seven havoc. Not great, but the defensive line yards and the stuff rate are borderline elite when it comes to that. So when we go to the defensive side of the ball, I haven't watched a ton of Auburn this year, but what I have watched has been like abysmal, and it's tough to watch, right? And the thing here is I don't see really any great advantages or disadvantages for either one of these units. So when you're looking at it from that perspective, like it's going to be a give and take. It can go either way. They're going to have their spots on both units, right? So when we dive in a little bit more, make sure I didn't miss any questions here. Yeah, the same triple option is the saving grace. Yeah, for sure. And that's one thing that is hard to like game plan against if you're not familiar with it. That's why we crushed Notre Dame last week. It was pretty easy cap. They're just familiar with it. And, if you don't have the reps against a style like that, it's going to be hard. So let's take a look at the depth profile because I think you'd be a little shocked at Vanderbilt's. And the reason is, they are elite when it comes to throwing the ball 9 yards or less. And that has a lot to do with the triple option and like just the RPO looks that they give, which just forces teams to play, almost like a run funnel style because they just don't want to get beat. So they're fourth overall in passes 9 yards or less on the EPA. So when you're looking down the field, they're actually really fucking good down the field too. They're first in EPA per deep attempt and 18th in EPA per medium attempt. But the thing is, they just don't throw the ball deep. So like you kind of just you're going to get like 5.5% of their passes will be 20 yards or more down the field, which is unfortunate. But that's not who they are. That's not how they play. But let's take a look at Auburn on that side of the ball, see how they look, right? So, they're just, they're kind of middling in these areas, 26th out of 70, and then, 40th, when it comes to passes 10 yards or more down the field. Terrible in the medium range, just downright awful. But again, like so, this is one of the things. There's not a clear cut advantage that I see for either of the teams, right? So let's take a look at the schedule. Let's make sure we're not missing anything from either side. Again, so this is just something that kills me, right? They go on the road and beat Kentucky. Sam's in the chat. Sorry about that, Sam. But like that just seems like the type of game Kentucky loses, right? They're just going to lose a game they don't give a shit about, right? They played tough against Missouri, but Missouri is overrated. We've been saying that for weeks. And they played okay against Georgia, right? This is a brutal 3-game stretch also to go on the road. So to be home against Vanderbilt this week seems to be like a good spot for them finally to get back home. But I think here's the thing. So for me, it's pretty simple, right? There are no clear-cut advantages for either of the teams, and it just doesn't seem like if Vanderbilt's going to be an underdog in a game that is within the realm of possibility of them winning, then I'm going to take them. 7.5 points is too many. It's just too many points. If they're gonna, if it's gonna be a competitive game, which I see it being with Pavia, he's just the saving grace basically, along with that option, then that's who I'm going to take. I don't feel like they're going to get out coached. There's no rest advantage. There's nothing that I'm seeing that is going to give them, any type of gigantic advantage, right? So, just to make sure we're not missing anything, let's take a look at Auburn and their rushing defense. So yeah, they've looked pretty good, right? But here's something to just point out, okay? New Mexico runs that same weird triple option style, right? 6.04 yards per attempt. They dominated that game, but that's just something to put an eyeball on, right? And I don't know. I think Pavia is going to give them some trouble on the edge, and that 7 points is plenty to get after, right? So, all right. We're done with that one. Anybody got anything else, or I'm just going to keep going down the list? I know I asked that 10 minutes ago, but I just want to make sure I see anything in here for you guys. All right. Nobody. All right. Let's keep going. Okay. All right. And also, I'm sorry I keep going back to the screen and you got to see that. This is my first live stream ever. So I'm just getting used to that. So we're getting on to our favorite team here, which is going to be Indiana versus Michigan State. And so without sounding super repetitive. Uh, the entire culture of the Indiana team is totally different with Signetti and the whole James Madison staff coming over. So like, and that's kind of been shown. And even though last week when I did the video, um, at the time I did it, I didn't realize Curtis Rourke was out. But once I realized that, like the cap was exactly the same. I felt exactly the same. They were going to be able to take advantage rushing the ball, and they should be able to cover their line, and they did without issue. So Michigan State has shown to be more of a tough game lately than earlier in the year. They're kind of coming into their own a little bit, but from the early downs data, like Indiana's elite. I mean, there's no other way around it. Now, when we get into the advanced stats, you know, there is a couple of things that Michigan State is going to be up against it. Having not being a very big havoc team, especially in the secondary, is going to be extremely concerning. And this is the thing. This passing defense, 94th in efficiency and 103rd in explosiveness, is going to be that could be a very long day for Michigan State. Now we come over to the offensive side of the ball for Michigan State. I mean, they just have not looked, up to snuff, right? In Indiana, they have one weakness, really, and that is explosive running plays. But Michigan State is third to last in, offensive explosiveness running the ball. So I don't know if they're going to be able to take advantage of that weakness. But in reality, I mean, the front seven here for Indiana has dominated pretty much every single game they've played, and that's where like they're going to have the most success. Now, let's take a look. I know the main thing is I haven't looked at Rourke. I feel bad. Is Rourke playing this week, or do we have the same guy as last week? Does anybody know off the top of their head? I can look it up. I'm unprepared. I am winging into this with you guys. Let's see. All right, passing. Game log. Rourke is in. Okay, so so Rourke is in. Okay, so just to kind of give you like a little perspective, you're going to see a totally different game plan with Rourke in. This is the game log last week, right? So 19 passing attempts. That's not going to happen. I don't think, I think Rourke is going to be for that 30 plus passing attempts. And so if Rourke is in, let's take a look at the depth profiles because that's going to be pretty much the entire, they create zero havoc essentially, and he's going to have all day. So fifth and 9 yards or less passing for, let's go to Power 5, excuse me. Make sure we get the right one. Even better. They're excelling pretty much against their entire schedule. And I know that, third overall in passes 9 yards or less, 62% solid. That's not like too big, but great and behind the line of scrimmage and short. Okay. So when we go to down the field, second in EPA per medium attempt and 25th in EPA per deep attempt. And that gives them third overall. So like, I mean, I'm one to have said, I've said this with my friends before, like you rarely see a group of 5 quarterback transfer into a big conference and succeed. Like, I mean, we have so many examples this year, like Daquan Finn, Grayson McCall. I mean, we see who else off the top of my head. Now I'm blanking. My bad, guys. But yeah, like it's just a rarity that they have the same success moving into a Power 4, Power 5 conference, however you want to word it, right? But this Rourke has, and I mean, I think it's a lot of scheme and a lot of like he's good. He was really good at Ohio. Now let's take a look here at Michigan State in the secondary because that's where the game is going to be decided more than likely. this is not solid. 51st. I mean, there's only 70 Power Five teams, and then down the field, even worse. Like it, I know it feels like we're looking at this game, and it's like, okay, um, it looks like I don't think the back of saw like yeah. I see what you're saying, Sam. Like it's not. I don't think it's a downgrade. I mean, Rourke obviously is way better than Jackson, but in this setting, I don't think Michigan. I understand that Indiana probably. Let's look at their schedule. I make sure I got it right. They have. They have Michigan next week, and yes, that is a big game because like I don't remember in my lifetime the last time they beat Michigan. I'm not a fan of either, but I don't think they're in a bad spot here. If anything, like Michigan State is coming off a huge letdown against Michigan in a game they probably should have won. You know, I think I think that's a big point, right? They should have won that game against Michigan. They were in it. They were up. They just had several turnovers. I don't see anything from my data or my analysis, my eye test um, that says they shouldn't be able to at least cover this, but definitely win. I think they're going to beat Michigan State. I know the line at 7.5 is similar to last week, where you're kind of like scared to take it, and you're just like, I don't understand, but yeah. So, all right, guys, I'm gonna move to the next one unless you guys got something you want me to go with. Doesn't feel like we've done 48 minutes. This is crazy. All right, we'll go on to the next one. I think I have a couple games left. Yeah, just a couple, not too many. All right, so Florida, Georgia, not something like that's probably on a lot of people's dockets, but big game. What is it called? The biggest outside cocktail party in the world, or some stupid shit like that. It's like every SEC game has some nickname attached to it. It's borderline annoying. But I think we kind of all over, like we were all over Georgia earlier in the year against Texas. That was just a spot that made more sense. This game against Florida, I think we can kind of safely say like Billy Napier's job is on the line for like the rest of eternity. I don't know if he's going to make it out of this season or into next season. Just it's kind of like what me and my buddy Sam have talked about before. When you're hiring a coach for these power conferences, you don't always like if you're Florida, you don't have to hire like the next best Sun Belt coach out there. Like Indiana hiring Cignetti made sense because Indiana's never been a powerhouse in football. So they went and got Cignetti that like they wouldn't get anybody else. But anyway, I digress. On paper, Georgia, like we have said, doesn't look nearly as good as they have in the past, and statistically, they don't look fantastic, uh, which is somewhat concerning. And their offensive line has been pretty pretty jarringly bad, if I would say so myself. Um, let's take a look real quick. But when I look at Florida, it's just I don't know how I could take them here in this spot. The rest advantage is a big deal to me. Well, it might not be an advantage. I think Florida had a bye week too. Yeah, Florida had a bye week too, where they just dominated Kentucky. So there is no rest advantage. My apologies on that. Um, I I think Florida could show up in this spot. Let's take a look overall at the depth profiles because Beck will factor in if they're going to cover a large spread. Yeah, see, I don't like this offensive style. 31.1% of the passes are behind the line of scrimmage. I just can't get into that. It's just not my thing. I don't dig it. I want them to take shots down the field. But then when we look they're pretty much middling into these areas, right? But let's look at the defensive side for Florida. They're just kind of a Jekyll and Hyde type team. Again, 36th overall out of 70 Power Five teams, and 15th, in the short area. So for me, like I personally am probably gonna like stay away from this game. I thought I would have like a take on it when I like plugged it in, but I can't see a spot where like I can say, yeah, I want this team or I want that team. You know, I don't know. I mean, it's a game that if you were like, I don't want to take the spread, but I'm going to tease something here, like it would make sense, right? You could tease it down or something like that. Um, I just I from the there's no like gigantic advantages, obviously, but the main thing is like I think Kirby Smart understands from here on out that they need every game. Like there can't be any doubt. Like they got Mississippi, they got Tennessee still. Like they're probably trying to put on a show here to continue this on. Even though they beat Texas and Alabama does not look great right now, they still need every single game. So like the biggest advantage is going to be in the coaching staff, and I think that's something you know something to be said. I don't know if you're going to say that many points, obviously, but it's probably just a stay away from me. All right, so the next game I want to take a look at. This is not one that a lot of you probably had on your list, but the Arizona State game. I've been like tracking them for numerous weeks now, all the way back to the Texas State game, and I think we have like a clear cut advantage in a couple areas here. So Arizona State is second in overall EPA on early rush attempts, and Oklahoma State is almost dead fucking last. So clear cut advantage when it comes to that part of it. And then defensively, obviously that's not their forte, but that is a clear cut. And we're going to take a look at the advanced statistics to kind of like dig deeper into it, right? So the Fighting Kenny Dillingham's Arizona State. I mean, Oklahoma State, even though they looked really good against BYU last week, um, was it last week or the week before? I have to check. But they look, I mean, on paper, they're fucking horrendous, like defensively. And the 117th in stuff rate, 126th in defensive line yards, 129th in rushing efficiency, and 133rd in rushing explosiveness allowed. Like this is like just I mean red flag after red fucking flag basically for me. I mean Scatabo could be running like all over them. And and yeah, I mean I think we can say BYU is slightly overrated. And I mean I think that's fair. They beat up on UCF last week, but I think that's fair to say that BYU is slightly overrated. But these advanced statistics when it comes to the rushing game for Oklahoma State is eye opening to me, and I think the line as it sits right now is probably like 4.5 still. Look it up real quick. Yeah, 4.5. So let's dive in a little deeper here. I just want to look at the game logs from a defensive standpoint for Oklahoma State. Because we don't really get a ton of matchups like this a week where it seemed I hate to be like, oh, it's obvious, but like sometimes it is fucking obvious. All right, so like this is something. Yeah, okay. So they played Baylor last week. That's right. Okay. So like looking at these rushing like averages here, and I'm not a per game guy by any stretch of the imagination, but I think it is crucial to kind of look at like the per carry attempts just to kind of understand like even though some of these games are like over, right? And the game script is like obviously they're going to run the ball a lot. That makes it even a bigger of a problem, right? Like they're just, I mean, only one team have they kept under 4 yards per attempt, and that's fucking Tulsa. Like, I mean, South Dakota State went for 4.43 yards per attempt. So like this is eye opening to me. I think, yeah, I mean, Oklahoma State with Bowman is disgusting. He's like fucking 47 years old and he still can't complete a hitch route. Like it's gross. Like it's disgusting. Now, let's take a look at Arizona State real quick and just make sure we're not like missing anything in general, right? So we're on a 5-loss lose streak here for Oklahoma State. Just terrible. But they're also going to get the extra rest here. And so the game against Cincinnati, I didn't really understand. I felt like they should have played better in that game. They just did not. And no real excuse, to say that, but they just didn't show up in that game. But when we're looking at what they want to do as a team, we're going to look at this game log, and it's obviously, look at these fucking attempts. Like, just if they're not attempting 40 times a game, like something's wrong. Like they just need to like reevaluate what they're doing, right? So even in the Texas State game where they struggled to run the ball, they still just kept pounding it. I could easily see this game getting out of hand, and they could put up like 275 rushing yards, and the game could be just a complete and utter shit show. I think that's one of the off the wall games that's probably going like underlooked, right? Because I think that entire offense being built around motion and run, and they're just playing really well. Like in comparison to last year, like they're on the rise. And Dillingham is a good coach. I think he's the second youngest coach in college football, but he knows what he's doing. Like who cares if he's 5'4"? Like who gives a shit? All right, so we are almost done, guys. Like I think I got 3 games left. Yep, I got 3 games left. You guys got anything else? I got 3 games on my docket left to get through. Does anybody have anything else they want covered? I'll give you guys a minute. You want UAB in Tulsa? Oh man, you guys have like a hard on for UAB. Did I cover Kentucky? I don't think I did. I don't think I covered Kentucky, Sam. Who are they playing this week? Let's take a look real quick. Oh fuck! How did I miss that? Okay, I don't know. How did I miss Kentucky and Tennessee? Okay, that's a bad. That's bad for me. I don't know. How did I? Yeah, how did I miss that? I'm sorry. Okay. Okay. I guess I will have to cover that game. That's a big game, especially for Tennessee. So let me give me 1 second. Shit, I can't believe I missed that. All right, let's pull up something real quick. All right, early downs. I have way too many spreadsheets, guys. This is a fucking problem, man. It's a problem. Okay, all right. So we're gonna do Kentucky, Tennessee because it's necessary. And I will do one of those games. Trick. You want UAB Tulsa or UNC Florida State? I'll do one of those. I don't know if I have enough time to do both. I got to get home here shortly. So you decide what you want to take in that, and while I'm doing this one, and then I'll swing to that. All right. So let's take a look real quick. Kentucky. All right. Yucca. God bless. 68th in early downs passing the ball, 36th in rushing, 62nd overall, right? So obviously offense is not their bread and butter. Shocker. But the thing is, though, like this is one thing we've been talking about. Tennessee's offense has been missing. It's MIA against Power 5 teams. They're just I can't pronounce Nico's last name so I'm not gonna like try to butcher it. I hate being that guy. But this guy is not Hendon Hooker. I mean, he might not even be Jalen Milroe at this point, or not. Uh, Joe Milton, Jesus Christ, Joe Milton at this point. Like he's bad. Like he's just, and they cannot get the ball down the field. So the thing is, Kentucky's defense, which is their hat that they hang their what they hang their hat on, hasn't been great. It's been average, but Tennessee's defense is elite. Like, I mean, it is one of, I would say, offensive or defensively, it's one of the top 5 units in the entire country, right? So let's look at the advanced stats real quick. I'm not going to have them mashed up, but we can take a look at them. So Kentucky offensively, like this is no shock, right? They're just not. I mean, it's a lot of red. Sam, do you have any insights of this? Maybe you want to share a nugget with us about your team? No? Okay. All right. Yeah. So they're bad, right? They're bad on offense. It's bad, right? So when we look at Tennessee, their biggest strength on offense is running the ball. But the thing is, like, I don't know if that's going to be a real advantage against Kentucky. They just seem to get up in these spots. So this is the thing. Kentucky, again, defensive stuff rate 11th, defensive line yards 28th, havoc total 30th, front seven havoc 11th. You know, you're just, I mean, their efficiency 64th and 56th, and explosiveness is not great. I wish it was better than that. But I mean, like, let's take a look at the line. Like, I mean, it's 17 and a half. Like this is, I mean, if this doesn't scream, I mean, they're getting 2 weeks to prepare here. Tennessee is, and they don't have a look ahead. Okay, there is no look ahead. Georgia is way off, 2 weeks away. But I mean, I gotta. I gotta say here, like this looks exactly like the type of game Kentucky covers, though. Like, I mean, they don't play well against shit teams, and they play down and up to competition, right? This looks like the type of game they might cover, but I'm not gonna have any play on that whatsoever. But I can understand why you might in that aspect. All right, good to see you, Sam. Catch the end of it. I'll talk to you tomorrow morning, dude. All right. So we got a couple games left: Louisville, Clemson, and then Texas A&M, South Carolina, Pitt, SMU, and then we're going to do the North Carolina game, and then that's going to be it, guys. And I got to go. All right. So Clemson, Louisville. I think we've seen like, I mean, I hate Dabo Swinney, to be perfectly honest, but I think we've seen like a resurrection to the team once they got trounced by Georgia. The offense looks really good, and it has been really solid, and it's done really well in the areas it's needed to do well in. And when we go to the advanced statistics side of the ball, like this, the only concerning part for the Clemson defense for me is going to be the explosiveness allowed, because Louisville is very explosive offensively. But then the flip side of that is like, their defense allows explosiveness, and Clemson is good and is producing explosive plays. So, but when we look at Clemson overall defensively, just elite in certain areas, again, where they're allowing explosive plays, that's not really something like Louisville is going to take advantage of from rushing the ball. Whereas, like when I look at Louisville, they're just, I mean, this game could get out of hand quickly, especially from a big play opportunity for Clemson. 5th and 9th in rushing and passing, and then you have Louisville is bottom, 15 or bottom 20 in both of those. So, but let's look at the depth profiles real quick, because I've been a huge like Cade Klubnik hater, because I think he's below average, to be perfectly honest. But in the short area, 54th, not great. 42nd overall in Mickey Mouse attempts. And then 7th in deep passes down the field. And they do throw it at a decent clip, 14%. 20% they should be throwing it a little bit more there. Let's look at the defensive side for Louisville. That's probably going to be where the game's won or lost. In the short area, they're okay. Behind the line of scrimmage is their best attribute there, but good God, down the field, just awful. 66 out of 30. Like, and this, like, I know you're like probably like, oh well, that makes sense why they allow explosive plays, but like it's important to like give some like credence to it, right? To give some like some supporting evidence of why the statistic says they're bad down the field or whatnot. So let's take a look real quick at the overall schedule. Yeah, I mean, Clemson's done everything they're supposed to do since the Georgia loss. I mean, just straight up. I mean, what do we got? 6 straight wins by double digits or more. I mean, like you can't. I mean, at least 15 points or more. And they're at home here, and there's not really a look ahead game to Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech is not like circled for them. And yeah, they're going to be on the same rest. I like Brian Brom, the Louisville coach. I think he's really good. I think he's out of his depth this year, though. I think this is just, this team is not what they expected it to be or wanted it to be. And I really think that Clemson is just going to kind of take advantage of that. They're going to take advantage of being able to have explosive plays down the field. And that's going to be a big difference maker when it comes to the spread, which I believe it's like 10.5. I mean, I could easily see that being something that they just get to without any issue. All right, so Trick, you got North Carolina, Florida State. This is, God bless. Let's take a look real quick. All right, so I don't think Mike Norvell is going to have a job at the end of the year. Not that that's a hot take or anything, but I mean, he is just. This team is fucking terrible. All right, so North Carolina is like middling. They're average, a little bit above average on the offensive side on early downs. Shocker, but Florida State is not. They're very bad. They're 63rd overall, 66 in rushing the ball, which is even more like alarming. And then when you go to the defensive side of it, Florida State's still been bad. Like 46 is not what you would expect from them. You would expect them to be much better. And then North Carolina is just kind of, they're there, 40th, 58th in EPA per rush attempt, but there's no way Florida State's going to be able to take advantage of that. I don't believe there's any way, shape, or form. So let's go to the advanced stats real quick. All right, so Florida State, they're explosive, which is hilarious to see, but look at this sea of red. I mean, they're bottom 35 in every category except passing explosiveness on offense. God fucking bless. Okay, and when you go to North Carolina, from an offensive standpoint, they're solid. They're good all the way around. And then let's look defensively. Because, I mean, Florida State's just as bad defensively. You guys know this, though. Like, there's no, like, I don't think any of that what we're talking about here is shocking, right? North Carolina, on the other hand, they have some weaknesses. 130th in stuff rate, 118th in defensive line yards. But I think, let's take a look real quick at the schedules. All right. So playing in Florida State is I guess kind of a something to be concerning. They lose, these 4 games in a row. To get back on the horse against Virginia dominantly is a good sign. Here's the thing. Like, I feel like this entire locker room is lost. Mike Norvell has lost this entire locker room, right? And so, I mean, the line is kind of concerning also, but he's lost the entire locker room, right? Yeah, we'll do Navy. I have Navy on there. I forgot about that. Yeah, I think so. Like, the line being 2.5 is something that's kind of it's alarming, right? Because you're like, well, maybe it should be 4.5, 5. But as you guys know, I don't like to read too much into the lines because that's not what makes my decision. I'm looking at the product and the data on the field. And Florida State's just they're lost, man. There's nothing about that team that I feel like they can turn it around. I don't they're they have nothing to play for. Everybody's transferring. Norvell's probably going to get fired. Like what game on this? I mean, they're definitely not beating Notre Dame. I mean, for sure, they'll probably lose by 30, and they're probably going to fucking get beat by Florida. Like I'd be interested to see what the Charleston Southern line is, simply because like you would like probably make a case to take Charleston Southern. Like it's asinine, right? So, but yeah, so I would say North Carolina or no play. Yeah, yeah. So let's go into we got Texas A&M, South Carolina, which is like a low key like banger game. I had A&M at the beginning of the year winning the SEC on my podcast that I was doing before I started doing YouTube videos. And that seems to be coming to fruition. But this game against South Carolina does give me some concerns. So overall, Texas A&M, they love running the ball with Colin Klein on early downs. I thought they would be passing it a little bit more, but that just has not been the case. But that's fine because they've been really good running it. The South Carolina offense is, they're not good. But let's like not be completely biased and let's take a look at the stats, right? So one thing that is concerning for Texas A&M is they are not explosive, and South Carolina limits set explosiveness, right? And so excuse me, God bless. Their offensive line and defensive line for A&M is where like their entire team is built upon, right? And so this will probably be their toughest task from a defensive line matchup, simply because South Carolina probably has a top 5 defensive line overall. I mean, 4th in havoc total, 7th in front 7, 2nd and front 7 havoc, excuse me. Oh, sorry, I got the library introducing something. All right, so they're going to be 12th in rushing explosiveness, 13th in passing efficiency allowed. So like the defense lines up well against Texas A&M here, right? And so when we go over to the offensive side, A&M's biggest weakness is allowing explosive plays, all right? Other than that, I mean, they're top 30 in every other category except for, the explosive stuff and this passing efficiency. So that is one thing that really does concern me in this matchup. And the reason is allowing explosive plays, especially in a tight-knit matchup, like that could be the game where that could be the point where the game turns, right? You guys know this, like big 20, 25-yard plays, the whole game. And I say this all the time, when it comes to college athletes, their psyches are like, they're not like professional athletes. Like it can change like that. The game can just, you see it all the time. You see a team go up like 10-0 and then they get outscored 32-3 and you're like, what the fuck happened? But let's look at the depth profiles. I don't think this is going to be like where the game is decided, but I think it's important to let's look at the defense first. Let's look at the defensive depth profiles and swing it back and work in reverse just to see if we see anything out of the ordinary. South Carolina, just number 1 overall in passes 9 yards or less. Texas A&M is 47th. That is kind of concerning, if you ask me. And then when we go to down the field, South Carolina is elite in the medium area, a little, they're average deep down the field, 12th overall, right? Texas A&M, on the other hand, that seems to be where they excel, right? It's going to be 10 yards or more down the field. So we're going to work backwards, like we just said, and let's look at the offensive profiles. A&M, let's get it right. All right, A&M here. I mean, they're throwing 55% of the time 9 yards or less, but they are not great in those areas. So that's going to be something that they're going to struggle with because South Carolina is going to eat up anything in that area, right? And so South Carolina, on the other hand, I mean, not great either. I mean, this is not shocking. If you watch South Carolina, their quarterback play has been abysmal. Um, but one thing that is very interesting right here is they're third overall in EPA per medium attempt and 10th overall in deep attempts. And that right there could be the difference maker. Now, they're not throwing it a lot, 10% and 20%, right? But that's still like, this is a close knit game, right? This is a spot where, you know, they could take advantage. Now, Texas A&M, fifth overall in deep attempts, which is good. You know, they're going to try to attack down the field, ninth overall in EPA per 10 yards or more. This is a super tough game. Like, this game is really, really, really good. And I let's take a look, see if we're missing something else. But I mean, this is a lot tougher than I thought it would have been when looking at it at first glance. I thought A&M would be able to, like do their thing. Um, they're coming off the LSU adrenaline dump, big spot. They got that win. They're got a bye coming up. There's no look ahead for them. Um, so this is one thing I am going to say. Let's make sure South Carolina. Yep. So they got 2 weeks. Okay. So this is where I'm going to kind of make my point. Okay. South Carolina has the rest advantage. All right. Also, Texas A&M. I mean, they have zero losses in the SEC. So this is a game. They don't want to lose this game, obviously, but it is a game they could lose. What are the standings? I don't have the standings in front of me, but if they went out, they beat Auburn and Texas, they're getting into the SEC championship game. So this is a game that they possibly can come up short here. And I think South Carolina is going to get up for this spot. I think when they had the spot against Mississippi, I was on South Carolina for that. I don't think I did a breakdown of it. And it was extremely disappointing. But to show that they had such a bad game against Mississippi, and then they showed up against Alabama in a game they probably should have won, and they completely dominated Oklahoma. I think this is a spot right here for South Carolina where it's a get right spot. And they've shown that they can play these teams close, like LSU, obviously Alabama, I think I talked myself into it. I think you can have South Carolina here at 2.5. I mean, I think Oh, the Washington USC game. Oh my God, no, I'm not going to get into that. You're right. You guys would think like I went to like I'm a Washington alum or something, but yeah, I'm not going to get into Washington USC. But yeah, that's like I've done more Washington and UAB videos than I think anybody else in the country that's not from those colleges. So, all right, guys, what do we got left? I have Pittsburgh and SMU is my final. Well, we have Navy. We'll do Navy quickly. All right, so I don't have the early down stuff for Navy, but because you guys know that it's a very simple cap, so we're going to look at it real quick. They're 10.5, if I'm not mistaken. They're playing Rice, correct, guys? All right. So Rice here is going to be 89th and explosiveness, 99th in stuff rate, 82nd in defensive line yards. They do have some havoc and some front seven, positivity. This is concerning though, 81st in rushing efficiency and then 96th in rushing explosiveness allowed. And that is going to be kind of tough to get around. Let me see if I can get my early down data for overall so we can look at that. That's going to be crucial probably. Yep. Just a million fucking spreadsheets. Come on. It's Power 5. Here we go. Matchups. I don't know if I have the overall. Yeah, I don't think I have the early down data overall. Let me go back to week 9 real quick. I don't know if Rice. Let me pull it up. Rice played Connecticut last week. Okay, we're gonna work off this data just to see. All right, defense. All right, so let's look here, Rice. Yeah, so they're 80th in EPA rush per rush attempt on early downs. So this is a tough spot, right? I think Navy is going to they'll probably show up there and they'll probably have a good spot. I think that's something they definitely will get up for. The season is not lost, obviously. I don't think anybody really thought they were going to beat Notre Dame. But hopes and dreams are hopes and dreams, right? They still have a ton to play for. So and they don't have a look ahead game. So I think at Rice they should get right, and they should probably cover that spread. I think it's 10.5 as it stands right now. So our last game of the stream. Thank you for those who have been here this entire time. Like we're pushing an hour 20. Appreciate it. First time ever doing the stream. So we have Pittsburgh and SMU, which is a very solid matchup in my opinion. Kevin Jennings is going to play for SMU. That's what they're saying. So that should that should ease anybody's thoughts on the offensive side of the ball. Defensively, SMU has translated into the ACC pretty well. Now, I know they have not played a very tough schedule, but you can only play what you got in front of you, right? So one concerning factor here, again, the explosiveness allowed by SMU and then just the explosiveness of the Pittsburgh offense. But when we're looking at it from a hat-on-hat perspective, SMU is elite in the trenches, right? Where their secondary is where they are being exposed explosiveness wise, and it's passing. They are 20th in rushing explosiveness allowed. So, Pittsburgh's going to have to take some passes down the field to win that game. I think SMU though had a gigantic reality check last week, and in a game where they had 6 fucking turnovers against Duke. And there's just absolutely no way they should have won that game. And I think they understand that they shouldn't have won that game, right? And to come out and win in overtime is just insane, right? This game against Pittsburgh, they're going to get them at home after this, which does not look like a brutal 3-game stretch for them. But before the year started, this was a stretch where a lot of people thought they would fall. But like I said, I had SMU in the very beginning of the year, but the cap was Preston Stone. He's not playing. So I can't really say I was 100% correct. I think this is a good spot for them. This is a perfect spot for a tease if you like playing teasers or something like that to get it down for them to win or something along those lines. I think that would be a perfect spot for it. If you don't feel comfortable laying the touchdown and a half, or I don't know if it's went over 7.5 yet, I think you really have a spot there where they're going to come home. They're they understand the severity of the game last week, and again they are playing to. Look at the rest of the schedule. They beat Pittsburgh. They're playing in the ACC championship game. There's no way around it. Unless they slip up here in these next 3 games, as long as they beat Pittsburgh, they're playing in the ACC championship game. And not tooting my own horn, but I did not see a lot of people floating that idea out there. I floated that idea out there and said they were going to get there, but it was defense and Preston Stone. So, all right, guys, that's going to be it. I can't believe I made it through an hour 24 minutes talking. All the way through. But I think we covered 10 or 12 games, maybe 13. So I appreciate you guys tuning in. If you haven't liked the stream already, I don't know if I'm going to do this every week. I only did it this week simply because I had a super busy schedule and I didn't want to take the time to edit 5, 6, 7 videos. And I figured I'd just cover them on stream. You guys can come take a look at them if you liked them. So you guys let me know what you think. You can comment on the stream or whatnot and let me know if you want something like this weekly or every other week or something like that. But yeah, so Always thanks again for watching, guys. I know there's only like a couple of you in here, but I really appreciate it. You guys have a good weekend. Good luck tomorrow. Take care.